guys, it's Shayla and welcome back to my channel where I like to scream into the void about topics that interest me. We are here to start our 24-hour yapathon talking about 90 Day Fiancé. Originally, I wanted to make a 90 Day Fiancé video about Big Ed and his big screw-ups throughout his time on 90 Day Fiancé, especially with his partner Liz. But then TLC outdid themselves by putting a sperm donor on one of their spin-offs, 90 Day Fiancé Love in Paradise. When I first heard about it, I thought it was going to be one of these spin-offs like Bachelor in Paradise, where they take a bunch of people from the show who didn't end up working out with someone and tossing them onto an island. But instead, 90 Day Fiancé Love in Paradise is essentially just dating. They're just dating each other. They're just dating and they live in different countries. On 90 Day Fiancé Love in Paradise, they had a guy named Gordy on the show. I would have never watched this spinoff had I not been on the TLC subreddit, and there were a ton of different posts talking about the sperm donor character, which I was like, what spinoff is he on? Because at the time I was watching both the main show and the Happily Ever After spinoff, and I was like, I don't see the sperm donor guy. But no, they saved Kyle for the Love in Paradise spinoff. The couple as a whole is Annie and Kyle. Annie is a single mom from Germany who lives in Malta, and Kyle is like if Joe Goldberg was a real person, and instead of putting women in a glass cube, he circled the world getting women pregnant. That's what he reminds me of. And his first spiel in the show, the first thing he says is that he likes eating cuisine when he travels and getting women pregnant. And he looks like this. He states that his hobby started when he was about 22 and he knew this lesbian couple and they couldn't afford a sperm donor, so he was like, well, what about me? And they were like, okay, and they had a baby, and ever since then, Kyle has been donating. At the time of this recording, he says he has about 70-something children and another 9 on the way. And Vice did a video about him a couple years back where he had about, I think, 40 kids at the time. And he's also been on Dr. Phil. So his story is fairly consistent about the fact that he is a sperm donor. This is legit. He's not faking it. This is his actual hobby. This man treats getting women pregnant like collecting figurines, like little trinkets. His little trinket is getting women pregnant. Kyle then goes on to take a bunch of pills to get his super sperm, and as he's rambling on, I just can't help but wonder how this sperm was the one that won the race. This Joe Goldberg of baby making has this little map that he lays out on this table and has little X's for every single place that he's had sex with women and gotten them pregnant in. And that's the big part. Yeah, I said he's having sex with them. Yeah. When he first said, I am donating, I was like, okay, he's doing it into a cup, he's giving them the sperm, they're going somewhere else, and they're artificially inseminating themselves. Okay, still weird, but a little more feet planted in reality. No. This guy is essentially an incel that has found a way to still have sex with women without having to do any of the work of creating a relationship, actually cultivating a relationship with them, by doing it under this guise of, I'm a good guy, I'm a nice guy, I just want to help women have families. It really just makes me feel good. I don't buy it. I don't trust this man. Any guy that looks like this, his eyes are like piercing into my soul in a weird beady-eyed bug kind of way. Kyle's telling all these women that if they actually have sex, they have a higher chance of getting pregnant, which is false. In the Vice video about Kyle, the doctor confirms that there is no higher chance of pregnancy whether or not you artificially inseminate versus having sex to have a baby. And then you might think, well, what Kyle does is weird, but maybe he's charismatic and charming. Maybe that's how he's able to convince all these women that using his sperm would be ultimately good for them. Nope, he's not charming at all. When Kyle and Annie meet at the airport for the first time, he puts his whole foot on the gas. He revs that right up and starts talking about how to earn his love-ins, Annie has to abide by this point system that he has in his head. Basically, this point system would culminate in Annie earning sex from Kyle with 10 points, and honestly, I wish 10 points would put his ass back on the plane, but we are not so lucky. Annie tells him that this point system is unhinged, and Kyle responds with that Annie is so sexy when she gets upset. He's one of those guys. And the only thing that Kyle will continue to call Annie throughout this experience is sexy. He never calls her pretty, he never calls her cute, he never calls her beautiful. It is always sexy. Kyle then goes to the place that he's rented to stay in Malta. He starts getting ready for their first date, crunches on the bed for his workout like he's Squidward in that episode of SpongeBob where he's just like, future! And he gets sexy for his date by wearing a t-shirt and basketball shorts, which is essentially what he wore when he was at the airport. Meanwhile, Annie looks gorgeous in this beautiful green dress. They sit down to eat, and Annie honestly questions, Kyle, why are you wearing such casual clothing? To which Kyle says, well, I'm an American, and as an American, like, we don't dress up like it's the 1900s. He's just making it seem like it's not him being lazy, that all Americans are like this. No Americans dress up on their first dates. He continues to say that Americans are in the future and that Europeans are in the past. And yeah, I'm sure when people thought about the future, they thought about flying cars, advancements in technology, and everyone wearing basketball shorts to go on dates. Kyle then continues to be a beautiful representation of America and loudly slurps his food and soup in front of Annie, which she is disgusted by, understandably. Then, like he's a literal dog, he asks Annie to scratch this certain part on his back. He said he needs her to hit this certain spot, which in his many endeavors with women, I doubt this is something Kyle has ever achieved. And then after all is said and done on this date, Annie continues to gaslight herself into thinking that this is going to work out. For the start of their second date, Annie explains that she's into Kyle because he's unpredictable. And I must say that's the one thing I can agree with. Kyle is truly an unpredictable human being. Annie plans this beautiful sightseeing date for her and Kyle, and once again, Kyle is wearing his basketball shorts. And on the drive there, Kyle keeps touching his balls. There's no other way to explain it. He keeps readjusting his balls. And Annie asks him, why are you always literally touching your balls? And he says he has to keep adjusting them so they don't get twisted or get too hot, I guess, because he needs his precious little super sperm to be in pristine condition. And he also reveals that he goes commando in his shorts so that his balls don't get too hot. And then when Annie's like, can't you just slightly adjust yourself without touching your balls? And he says he cannot adjust them without touching them because they are too big. Yeah, I'm sure every working brain cell he has is stored in his balls. We then get the pleasure of watching Kyle brush Annie's hair like she's a horse, and then Annie asks Kyle if he inseminated anyone on his trip to Australia. To which he says, I don't remember. Like a huge liar. Oh, but he suddenly remembers he did have sex with a woman in Australia. Oh my God, such an easy thing to forget. Between the sightseeing, the trying the international cuisine, the inseminating women in every place I go, it slips the mind, truly. And he claims that she was desperate. She needed my super sperm from my massive balls. You have to understand. Annie points out that him having sex with women to get them pregnant is not just some procedure to her. It is an intimate act. And if Kyle can't stop having sex with women to get them pregnant, this is not going to work out long term. And Kyle doesn't really give an answer as to whether he can give up inseminating women or not. He just lets it lie until the future. Date 3. Let's give it up for date 3. I'm surprised Kyle's able to get 3 dates. Kyle is finally wearing pants. That's such a bare minimum statement. Like, oh my God, you're such a great guy. You're finally wearing pants. Like a baby. And then on this date, he also shows that he would be a bare minimum father. He tells Annie that they could travel together and see the world if they continued their relationship long term. To which Annie asks, okay, but what about my existing son and a future baby? And he's like, oh, well, you just like put the baby in the crib. And then Annie says,
Did your mom do this to you?
I don't remember what we did.
Did your mom work 8 hours and put you on the side?
I don't remember what we did.
Maybe that's the reason why you are like you are.
But Annie has accumulated enough points at the end of this date to get an awkward little smooch from Kyle, which seems more like a punishment than a reward.
I'm going to put my hands on your leg. Okay, all right. So here we go. Here we go.
Let's do one kiss.
I'm going to, how do I do it? We gotta get closer. Okay, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Okay, I can't see you.
What you doing?
I'm trying to figure this out. The moment needs to be right. Okay, so come here. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
What is this?
That was it.
It's just every time I watched Kyle on screen, I'm either working out or making dinner, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I hate him. There's just something about this man that is so unnerving and so painful to watch. Date 4 is them shopping for more pants for Kyle. Like, he's a kid and can't do that by himself. And he mentions that he wants tight trousers to show off his massive package. Which doesn't make sense to me because he was just saying before that his balls can't be crushed or his sperm won't be optimal. But you want super tight pants so your outline is showing? But just like his balls being suffocated in jeans, this situation becomes suffocating when Annie brings up that she doesn't want him to donate anymore. She states that he is addicted to donating, and Kyle denies this, of course, as any addict would. And also, Kyle keeps talking on and on in little clips of the show about how he's had to sacrifice having a partner to pursue his hobby, but he's not willing to give up any of his donation to actually have partnership. Kyle doesn't truly know proper communication though, because he sits there with this crazy smile on his face saying like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I can give it up. I don't know the answers right now. Because he's not using 2 brain cells to rub together to think, because all his brain cells are in his balls. Annie is literally crying, and Kyle is just standing there awkwardly. Like, he barely emotes or expresses sadness whenever he makes Annie upset. He says that he wishes Annie would trust him if he's safe and properly communicates, which is not what this is about. And also, how can she trust you to be honest when you weren't honest earlier? You were trying to pull an amnesia bit about forgetting that you had sex with a woman in Australia. But Kyle, like a moron, decides that the best way to prove to Annie that he's a good partner and is safe doing what he does is not to give up impregnating women. It is to go get an STD test. And the whole point is not that she thinks you have gonorrhea. The whole point is that Kyle acts like sex isn't an inherently intimate act. He is able to have sex willy-nilly with all these women he wants to get pregnant, but he puts Annie on this point system to where she has to earn his affection. Annie feels like his withdrawing of his affection is trying to differentiate her from the women that he donates to, but in the end, it ends up isolating Annie. Annie has Kyle then meet her friend Stephanie, who he immediately starts talking to about the fact that he donates. Like, they have not sat down for more than 2 seconds before Kyle immediately is like, so you know that I donate to women. You know that I have a million kids everywhere, and I donate to women, and I have sex with women from every other country. And did I mention I'm a sperm donor? Like, he can't talk about anything else. Stephanie asks a good question, and that is, would Kyle ever be willing to actually donate through a bank, like a sperm bank? And Kyle said no, because it's too cold and clinical. This man is full of contradictions. On one hand, going to the bank is too cold and clinical, but he also said that when he's having sex with them, that it's very clinical. It's not intimate, It's just we're there, we get her done, you sit there with his super sperm in you. Oh my God, I can't imagine. And that's it. Really, Kyle just has every excuse in the book to get laid under some moral guise of helping women. Kyle goes on to say that what he's doing doesn't hurt anyone, and Stephanie rightfully points out that what he's doing hurts Annie. And she's someone, or she's supposed to be someone to you. And then Kyle makes up some crappy excuse about how he's attempting to figure out what he's gonna do because he is getting older and he can't donate forever. But it just sounds like a lot of words to attempt to appease both Annie and Stephanie. But I am sure, I would bet money on it, that he's not gonna stop when he's 40, he's not gonna stop when he's 50, and he's literally never going to stop unless he physically can't do it anymore or he somehow goes to jail. Oh, then he awkwardly tries to show affection by slapping Annie's hand, and it just comes off like he's a robot or AI program learning to walk around and be a human in a human skin suit. Okay, later that night, Annie and Kyle hang out at his place he's staying at in Malta, and it's filthy. His clothes are everywhere. There's just a trash bin on top of a table, like that's normal. And for some reason, I guess this really gets the blood pumping, because Annie and Kyle go and have sex. The next morning, Kyle brags about his massive hog and says they didn't use protection because they conveniently didn't bring it up. So then it cuts to Annie going to the grocery store buying a ovulation test to see if she was ovulating, because she doesn't think she was, but just to be safe, she kind of wants to know. She takes it and it has a faint second pink line, which to her means maybe I was ovulating, maybe I was not. So she calls Kyle and is like, hey, I'm not ready to have another baby right now, and I want you to pick me up plan B. And Kyle, like a psycho, just starts laughing, being like, well, you know, like, it's kind of weird because I'm a sperm donor and, like, I don't really prevent pregnancies. I make them happen, you know? Like, I know it's really quirky of me, but, like, this is weird. Just buy her the pill. She's obviously annoyed, and she's like, Kyle, I don't care what you usually try to do. You're not doing that with me. Go buy me the morning after pill. And, of course, Kyle shows up. Annie's made them dinner, and she's like, where's my pill? And Kyle didn't do it. Shocker, I know. The weird, crazy sperm donor didn't go pick up the morning after pill. And then, oh my God, he only gets worse and worse. He starts talking about how, because he's so experienced getting people pregnant, that he knows Annie's body better than she does, and knows that she's not ovulating.
But Annie is clearly overreacting. She's an older woman. It's much lower chance of pregnancy, and she wasn't ovulating. I knew this.
You said yes on the phone. And how I can trust you if you say yes here and then you're already betraying me?
Making babies is what I know, right? I knew you weren't ovulating. I know your body really well.
But how you can know my body? You not even know me.
I know your body very well because I track your cycle.
What the hell is he talking about? He's like, you're an older woman. I know from my tons of experience just randomly having sex with women and trying to get them pregnant that I know women's bodies better than they do. I would throw Kyle out of a window. I would kick him out of my house immediately. Put him back on the plane. Ship him, FedEx style, back to where he came from. He's not respecting Annie's feelings, her right to the morning after pill, or anything involving her in this situation. And if the pill gives her peace of mind, regardless of if it's logical or not, she deserves to have it. He doesn't care about her well-being or her peace of mind because he just wants to be right about being the master of pregnancy. Annie expresses that she's really hurt and she doesn't know where the relationship is gonna go now. And Kyle feels like this is the perfect time to show her his STD test, which of course she does not care about because that was never what this argument was about. She points out that this test isn't for her. This is for all the women he intends on donating to show how healthy he is. Kyle finally confesses that it's not just that he donated in Australia before visiting Annie, he donated in Norway and in London. And then Annie brings up how she's always been more honest with Kyle and brings up how she was honest about her ex-boyfriend with Kyle because I guess there was some overlap period between Kyle and Annie talking and Annie having an ex-boyfriend and then Annie potentially hooking up with said ex-boyfriend. But firstly, she was dating this ex while her and Kyle were video chatting. They hadn't met yet. Then Kyle asks if Annie had had sex with her ex before he came over to Malta. And she says yes. He gets super upset, saying that if he had known that, he wouldn't have come over to Malta. And Annie points out that Kyle didn't seem to give a crap about whether Annie was dating this other guy or not. He was more focused on all the women he was getting pregnant. Which also feels hypocritical that he's like, you're not honest with me. When it's like, you weren't honest about 3 whole women that Annie didn't know existed. You knew this other guy existed and you seemingly didn't care. Kyle has no right to ask women to not have sex with other people if he's in a partnership with them when all he does is have sex with other people. Kyle finally says that he won't give up donation. Annie comments on how he comments on women's posts on Instagram, women looking for donators, and how his DMs are full of people asking if he'll donate to them. And how she can't live a life having a partner who's constantly having sex with other women because, once again, most people wouldn't be able to deal with that. Finally, Annie ends their relationship. Kyle packs up to leave Malta, but he reaches out to Annie wanting to have one last cup of coffee to put some closure to the relationship. Annie then says when they meet up that she doesn't feel like he actually tried hard enough to have a relationship with her. Kyle brings up that Annie has her own issues, she cheated on him, and then complains that Annie didn't think about how he felt when all Kyle does is think about what Kyle wants. He then has the audacity to top it all off, like the icing on this cake, to say that if Annie is pregnant, it's probably her ex-boyfriend's. And then he has the nerve to say that he felt like Annie was trying to pin this non-existent baby on Kyle. What would Annie pinning the baby on Kyle do? Because clearly Kyle doesn't support the other 70, almost 80 children he has. Why would this one be any different? Final thoughts. Kyle is a creep. There's that Vice video that I mentioned about him where it breaks down more Kyle lore. I will link that video in the description, where it has a doctor in the same video debunking half of what Kyle says, which is good. It also has one of the women he donated to, but she had a miscarriage, and she's talking about how after Kyle had visited her and had sex with her, he was bragging about how he loves his job so much because he gets to travel and it gets him laid. In the Vice video, he also claims that most of his inseminations are by cup. He doesn't do them a lot through sex, but that seems to have changed by the time that 90 Day Fiancé films, because it's seemingly that he only donates through sex. And then I was watching this Kennie JD video where she's talking about the Netflix docuseries, The Man with 1,000 Kids. I'll also link that in the description. And in that one, she's talking about how there's this group on Facebook that has white men going to Africa to donate sperm over there. And it's part of some sick, twisted group trying to basically make Africa white. And guess who's part of that group? Kyle Gordy. He's on the Facebook page. Overall, I just don't get how there's so many women willing to have kids with this man when he's clearly unhinged, unstable. And there's also videos on YouTube about how Kyle is a carrier for some kind of genetic disorder. I didn't look too much into that, but that's also why this is so unethical. Because sperm donors who go to sperm banks and donate their sperm ethically, they have to be tested for certain diseases. You can't just willy-nilly take sperm from anyone. You have to pass a certain set of parameters to be able to safely donate. And sperm banks also, or how they're supposed to work, you can only have a limit of so many people you can donate to and so many successful births, because the more children you have, especially in one area, the higher risk you have of those children growing up, meeting each other out in the world, having sex with each other, and then making inbred babies because they didn't know they were brother and sister. Overall, I think this might be the worst person I've seen on 90 Day Fiancé. He is just a manipulator who's using this guise of trying to help women to have sex with as many women as he can. And honestly, I hope his sperm fails. I hope his sperm count goes down. I hope that the exposure from this show and from that documentary that he's also mentioned in, and from the many videos of him on YouTube, I hope and pray that more and more women find out about him and stop using him as a sperm donor, because he is clearly a piece of work. Anyways, that's all that I have to yap about today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!